Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our webinar, and hopefully you had an opportunity to hear the webinar that was recorded last week with Amandia Ford from the Georgia Department of Education regarding learning targets. And today is the companion webinar that talks about how we can incorporate learning targets into our work as parent mentors here in Georgia. So you may recall that we set an expectation at the fall conference that we would begin to utilize learning targets so that we could more effectively measure how productive we are at or how successful we are at training families to do the behaviors that we intend for them to do in order to get the outcomes that ultimately that we're looking for our students. So today I have three stellar parent mentors here to present to you about their work and how they utilize these tools and what they do. So I'm going to turn it over now to Miss April Lee from Wayne County. April, take it away.
Thank you. Well, we're coming today, as Ann said, to kind of give another opportunity to practice learning targets as you learn to implement them in your work. And to do that, we wanted to take the time to look at a couple of different scenarios that may be similar to the work that you're doing in your system, so that you might see how learning targets might impact the work that you're doing, and whether it be a small system, a large system, whether you're working with a classroom or a grade level, whether you have two parent mentors in your system or just one, and just some of the things that come up within your work that might be impacted by learning targets. So these are our learning targets today. We want you as the parent mentor who is participating to be able to say, I can write an appropriate learning target that will support my work as a parent mentor. I can list two methods to use to collect learning target data for my quarterly or end of the year reporting, and I can explain the purpose of learning targets and their connection to gaining that outcome where we measure student success based on the work that we do as parent mentors. So this is what we expect you to be able to walk away after this webinar gaining this knowledge. We're going to have our first scenario given by Cynthia Chris.
Hello. Today you will see the Georgia Parent Mentor FY17 Toolkit. And inside that toolkit, you will find evidence to practice, you find objectives, SMART goals, vital behaviors. These are what we're going to use to implement in order to continue building bridges to bright futures. Inside the toolkit, I'm going to focus today on vital behaviors. Vital behavior 1, family and student will use provided exercises to practice at home regularly, reporting efforts using preferred method of communication. Now you can find this vital behavior on Evidence to Practice guides, Aspire, CAFE, Literacy, and Partnerships. It will be vital behavior number 2. And the suggested tools for this particular behavior is a homework guide, reading log, and communication log. Vital behavior 2, family and student will track ongoing conversations by using conversation starters or progress reporting to discuss attendance, behaviors, and academic needs of students. You can also find this behavior on Evidence to Practice guides, Aspire, Graduation, and Literacy. It will be vital behavior number 6. The suggested tools for this particular behavior is communication log and conversation guide. The target group used for these two particular behaviors will be 12 families. They're at grade level, high school, grades 9 through 12. To start this project, the pre-surveys will be given to the families to complete, and it will be given during the month of October, around October the 6th, and the parents are asked to return the surveys by December the 1st. The project introduction will be introduced to the families in October. At that time, for this first vital behavior, the parent mentor will, introduce the vital behavior to the teacher so that she will be able to give the students a semester calendar that lists each literature and arts project assignment and the project due date. The teacher will also email the project assignments to the parent mentor. Then the parent mentor will create a homework guide for parents to use to assist in helping with the assignments. And the homework guide, I call it a parent's hint sheet. It's just a guide to give them a background on the assignments. Some of the parents, it's been a while since they've been in school and had literature and art readings, so this kind of give them a quick review of what's going on in the classroom. The parent mentor will meet, the parent mentor will meet individually with the families and give the assignments and the homework guide. The parent mentor will also explain the homework guide, provide teaching helps, and tutoring if necessary to the families. The families will attend 3 vital behavior training workshops in order to learn different methods of communication that will be used to report the students' efforts, and also different instructional techniques that they could use to assist the student in completing the assignments. The families will review walkthrough demonstrations which are created by the high school counselor and performed by some of the selected high school teachers. This will give the families an opportunity to kind of see how to actually put these strategies and techniques in practice. Then they will also practice reporting the efforts using their preferred method of communication, and they will also practice using the suggested data tool collection. Throughout the year, the parent mentor will support the families through home visits, emails, and if needed, if the families begin struggling to do the vital behaviors, then they'll be able to get extra vital behavior practice sessions. Vital behavior 2, the parent mentor will meet individually with the families to give them a conversation starter toolkit. And inside that toolkit, it will have a list of conversation starters for and everything that has to do with that you can think of with a high schooler in school. The families will also attend 3 vital behavior training workshops to learn how to use different conversation starters to discuss ongoing conversations as it relates to attendance, behaviors, and academic needs. After the families review the walkthrough demonstrations, which is also created by the high school counselor and performed by selected high school teachers, then they'll practice tracking the conversations using the suggested data tool collection, and then also they will be able to see how they are to replay these or use these techniques as they assist their child in conversation starters. Throughout the year, the parent mentor will do home visits and email the parents, and also parents who are struggling, they will be able to receive more vital behavior practice with scheduled practice sessions. For vital behavior 1, family and student will use provided exercises to practice at home regularly, reporting efforts using preferred method of communication. The learning targets, I can describe 2 communication methods that I will use to assist my child in reporting his or her efforts in completing literature and arts project assignments. I can list 2 instructional techniques that I will use to assist my child in completing his or her literature and arts project assignments. Now, for this vital behavior, during trainings, families will explore different communication methods and instructional techniques reviewed in the demonstrations. Then they will select their top favorites, and then they'll be able to perform this in a role play activity. For vital behavior 2, family and student will track ongoing conversations by using conversation starters or progress reporting to discuss attendance, behavior, and academic needs of a student. The 2 learning targets, I can identify 2 conversation starters that I will use to assist my child in developing a perfect attendance record. The second one, well, I did 3. I can identify 2 conversation starters that I will use to assist my child in developing positive behavior management skills. And the third one, I can identify 2 conversation starters that I will use to encourage my child to obtain good grades and be recognized as an honor roll student. During the training, families will review a list of conversation starters from their conversation starters toolkit. Then they'll write their top 6 favorites on index cards, and that way they'll be able to take the index cards home with them and use them as they develop these conversations and keep track of them. They'll have them on their index cards because these were their top favorites, so they'll be able to, they won't have to say, well, what were they? They already know what they are. So writing them on the index card is a way for them to remember. Student success. Imagine the possibilities. If we implement the stakeholder engagement, adaptive solutions, increased graduate, and SMART goals, vital behaviors, objectives, we can end up increasing the graduation rate, and it will be possible for all students to succeed.
Thank you, Cynthia.
You're quite welcome.
All right, Patty, you ready?
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
And
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to talk about putting the work together in a large school district. I'm in Fulton, and we have thousands of students here with IEPs. So this year in selecting our vital behaviors, I actually have a partner. Her name is Sabrina, and she and I chose to focus on graduation, specifically on person-centered planning and transition checklist for our vital behaviors. And when we looked at both of those vital behaviors, we came up with our learning target that we wanted to work with parents this year. And remember, when you write your learning target, you actually write it from the learner's point of view. So our learning target is, I can list 3 supports I need to reach my hopes and dreams for the future. And again, that's from the learner's point of view. So over the years, we have had to select our groups to find our target groups, and sometimes we're successful at it and sometimes we're not. So ideas that we've tried in the past, we actually held workshops at schools, and those, we had people that would come and attend our workshops, but we were never really able to get a good core group of parents together that would stay together. So then this year, is that better on the microphone?
Yes.
I know it was kind of loud. Okay. Then a couple of years ago, we started a parent university. And so last year at our parent university, we held a session on person-centered planning. And we thought that we would take that group of parents that attended that session to be our target group. And again, that worked out pretty well in the beginning, but ultimately the group ended up falling apart because our district is so large and the parents were from so many different places across our district that it was just hard to find a good central meeting location and times that would work for everybody. So ultimately, we did not have 5 people in our group at the end of the year. So this year, I've actually started a club at our local high school. It's called the Super Spartans Parents Club, and it's a booster club for all the parents of the kids at the school, the kids who have disabilities. And I think that this group is going to work out well to be able to get a target group because all the parents are in the one location, they're located at the one school. I can hold the meetings at the school, their kids attend that school there, so I think that they have a lot of vested interest in their they have a lot of good buy-in to attending the meetings. So remember, when you select your vital behaviors and you have your learning target and you have your target group, you're going to want to do a pre and post assessment with your group so that you know what the parents already know about the topics that you're going to cover. Then based on the assessment that you give them, you'll determine what you need to teach them, where the gaps are, and then when you're finished with your work in the springtime, you're going to want to give them another assessment to see, did they learn what you wanted them to learn? When you work with your target group, you can do it in a large group setting or a small group setting or individually. It's kind of whatever works best for you, and sometimes it's kind of up to the parents. So one of the challenges that we face is keeping our target group together. So one thing that I recommend, and that we've talked about this before, is to start with as large a group as you can, but no more than 20 parents, because more than 20 parents becomes a bit unwieldy. Be persistent with your parents. Follow up with phone calls and emails. If a parent can't make a meeting, provide the information and the materials to the parents at a separate time. You can offer makeup dates for your meeting times. You could maybe have them call in. If they can't actually physically attend your meeting, you can have them call in or perhaps even FaceTime. Maybe using a webinar would be a good way to keep your target group together for the whole year. And then finally, perhaps you want to vary the times of your meetings. You know, maybe some parents do better in the morning and some do better in the evening, and maybe even holding 2 meetings to meet the needs of both of those groups of people in order to keep your target group together would be beneficial. And finally, remember, at the end of the year, in spring when we do our final reporting, you're going to want to have at least 5 members of your group still intact from the beginning of the year. So we have to collect our quarterly data, and you can do that in a large group setting, a small group setting, or you can even do it one-on-one. And one-on-one doesn't necessarily have to be face-to-face. It can be, but perhaps it's also via phone call or perhaps even an email. There are lots of different ways that you can collect your data from your group. It doesn't always have to be something with paper and pencil. You could maybe just verbally ask a question and keep track of responses that way. You could use a checklist that maybe parents fill out. Of course, there's always surveys. You can observe the parents and see what they're doing. If you're having them maybe research websites, you can observe them researching the website, and you'll know whether or not they're doing the task that you'd like them to do. Maybe you could create a Google Doc that you send out to parents, perhaps an email, or maybe even assessing them and collecting your data via phone call. When you write your final report in the spring, you really want to tell the story of your work. You want to provide lots of details. You want to provide juicy words that are very descriptive, because what you want to do is write this report so that if somebody else reads it, maybe somebody who's not even a parent mentor reads it, will be able to understand the work that you did and be able to take that information and replicate your work maybe in their district. You're going to want to include both your successes and your failures in your report, because you can actually self-assess and look at it and say, this is what I tried this year, but it didn't work out very well, and I think it's because of X, Y, Z, and I know that next year I'm going to try to do it differently. And finally, again, you're going to want to be able to make this report readable so that somebody else can take what you've done and try to replicate it in their district. And that's it.
Thank you, Patty.
Thanks.
All right. The third example that we want to highlight with engaging our families in the work that we do is going to be related to Aspire. So for my example's sake, we're going to be working with middle school, high school families. I'm in a small, medium-sized district, and while we have district-wide Aspire happening, we're choosing to target more of our middle school and high school families related to getting more families and students involved in participating meaningfully in their IEP meetings. So I'm starting where we normally start, with looking at our evidence to practice guide, and we have one dedicated to Aspire this year found in your toolkit. So I have selected Goal 1, which is learning the new skills and applying those skills, and I'm utilizing the vital behavior that's related to the IEP checklist or planning tool, as well as the self-determination checklist to identify tasks or activities that will help build skills that are needed to participate in the IEP meeting as well as in real life. So this is an example of a flyer for Aspire. This year, rather than have one district-wide meeting or several district-wide meetings, I actually worked with a set of teachers from every school to host a Aspire meeting at their school so that parents could have more direct contact with teachers that might be supporting their students. I found that each school kind of handles their Aspire project maybe a little differently. The way they collaborate, sometimes they share different ideas, so one school might really focus on one type of getting students ready, while another school feels that it works better for them to do something else. So in keeping with that, I asked the teachers to think about hosting a meeting at their school so that they could share their individual ideas about students and their involvement so far in Aspire with those families. So my presentation took up part of the hour, and then that Q&A or some sort of demonstration from a student or teacher took up the rest of the hour. So in a typical training setting, this is prior to implementing learning targets, which I'll add in just a minute, was taking that family pre-survey, doing that pre-assessment of where parents were and their knowledge and understanding of Aspire or self-determination, as many of my trainings actually deal with self-determination rather than just Aspire specifically, and making available to families the handouts or the tools that they will be utilizing when they are practicing out the vital behaviors that I will support them in doing. Again, I mentioned the teachers or students sharing out some more detailed information about specifics at their school. And then really that coaching that takes place as I show them the tools that they'll be using, the reasons why it's important for them to do some of this practicing at home. And but really what's missing here is, are my parents prepped to do the work that I'm going to ask them to do? And by just providing them simply the tools to do that, am I providing them enough? So this is just a sample of what their tabletop might look like as they come to sit down for this training. And I've provided them the self-determination checklist and an IEP checklist. And but in order for them to be able to participate in the training or to walk away with the knowledge that I want them to have in order to complete these tasks, I really had to think about what do they know now compared to what do they know after they've left me. And so in addition to the handouts, at the top of their desk would be another little blank sheet of paper, and that would give them the opportunity to do the pre-quiz to find out if they are ready to do the activities that I'll support them in doing. So, for instance, my learning targets that I've decided on that go along with the Aspire presentation that I'm doing is that parents will be able to say, I can identify 3 activities my child can work on at home to improve his or her self-determination skills. This learning target actually kind of has 2 implications. Can they identify 3 activities? Do they know what self-determined activities are? And then also, do they even understand what the definition of self-determination is? So while I'm measuring the activities, it also is important that I'm assessing whether or not they fully understand self-determination as they walk in the door or as they walk out the door. I can list 3 sections on an IEP that my child and I should discuss before his or her next IEP meeting. 2 things I want to point out here is I want them to be able to think about the different sections of an IEP, but also I want them to walk away with the understanding that they should be discussing these things prior to an IEP meeting at home. So I'm kind of setting the tone for the expectations that I'll be setting through the content that I share during the presentation. So to go along with that blank sheet of paper that I'm put at the top of their desk, I also give them these 3 questions to write in their answers. So for instance, when they come in, there might just be a blank sheet of paper, and I'll show them these 3 questions, say write out your answers to these 3 questions. And then through the presentation, if you don't feel like you fully understand how to answer these questions, you should be able to answer them when we get done. So they're then going to answer these 3 questions that kind of go along with the learning targets, and that's the first one is a true-false. My child needs to learn self-determination skills by practicing choice-making and goal-setting at home. This gives them maybe an example of some self-determination skills that they haven't thought of as choice-making and goal-setting, but it also gives them an easy way to say true or false. So I'm not asking them to provide a lot of details if they understand what self-determination is at this time. And that's easy for me to measure true and false. The second question, these are 3 self-determination activities my child can be working on at home. Well, as part of the presentation, they will actually be doing part of the self-determination checklist with me and their child, hopefully, if they attend as well, that they will identify 3 activities. But if they already come in the door knowing what activities they should be working on, that's great. But most likely they will not know that until after they do the activity as part of the presentation, where they circle what actions they have not already been working on at home. The third My child and I will discuss the following parts of his or her IEP and be ready to share our thoughts at his or her next meeting. Again, I'm setting the tone that that's an expectation, that they should be prepared to share their thoughts at the next meeting. But if they're not even sure ahead of time what parts of the IEP are there, they may not be prepared to share their comments or thoughts on those. So we'll have different answers for all of these questions, and we're not looking for everybody to have the same answers. We're just looking to see, do they know what these things are. One family might think it's really important to work on chores or speaking up for themselves or communication, but then they may learn during the presentation that self-determination skills also have to do with asking for help when you need it in the classroom, understanding your accommodations, and those types of things that they'd never really thought about. So just to further outline the presentation time that I might do, whether it be in a large group setting, which is part of my example, is really doing this in a large group training, would be that my presentation would include the importance of self-determination, the ideas to improve self-determination skills, so things that they can be working on at home. I would actually possibly have a sample of an IEP, and we would review the parts of the IEP together along with that checklist so that they're using the tools that I'm expecting them to use at home as we're doing the presentation. And those activities that go along with using those two checklists would then get them started in the activities that they would be doing as part of the vital behaviors with their child. So if they start with me learning why it's important, learning the benefits of those things, then they also have the activity started, then the follow-up with them will be how did they implement what they already selected. So the post-quiz that goes along with the pre-quiz to make sure that they gathered the content that I wanted them to get out of the training goes along with me saying, I need to see if I presented the information in a way that everyone understood. So I'm taking that judgmental attitude maybe out of it that some families may hear or feel from me if I say, here, take a pre-quiz, take a post-quiz, let's see how you did. And it's turning it back on to me saying, did I do what I needed to do to help you and support you in understanding what it's going to take once you leave here to do the work that I'm asking you to do. And that's to build that trust relationship. So as I review the post-quiz in comparison to the pre-quiz possibly, I'm going to run into two different things. The green light, always go. The families learn what they needed to learn. Every family acted, responded to the questions, whether it be in my large group setting or some way I follow up with the family afterwards. They understand what it's going to take for them to perform the action. Or we're going to have a caution light. I can conclude that those families, not every family in my group was ready to take off and take what they learned today and be able to implement the work. So if I find that out, then my work continues on a couple different levels. I'm going to be working with that target group piece of those that were ready to go and were ready to practice and follow up with them on the benchmarks just like I would typically. But then I'm going to know that there was a certain number of families that needed additional one-on-one support. Maybe they needed additional examples that I didn't provide during the training, or even a more simplified tool to use to address some of the activities that may just need additional suggestions, or the IEP planning tools. We know that there's several different ones out there that might be more simple for a student and the parent to work on together. But then also addressing obstacles as they come along that may not even have anything to do with specifically the learning targets. Maybe they did learn the information, but they don't know how to overcome other obstacles that come into play. I'm just continually changing the work that I'm doing with families so that everybody feels supported in the work that we're asking them to do. So as I look forward to the end of the year, and looking at this planning to implementation guide that was part of the toolkit, if you look at questions 10, 12, and 15, we are going to be asked to provide some data on what families learned, how they put that learning to action, and then was there impact on the student's success in some way, and how can we demonstrate that we collected that information. So this is how I plan on being able to do that. As far as learning outcome, I feel that in order for any family to do what we're asking them to do, we can't not have 100% on this. So basically, I'm continually working, whether I get 100% that walk away from one training with me and know the information, and that's what they take away with them, or whether half of them get it while I'm in the training and half of them I still have to continually work with. My goal is to know that everybody walked away with the knowledge of the information that I wanted them to walk away with related to self-determination. And Ann shared this with us before, that this is the easiest area for us to impact, because we might not be able to impact whether they do the action or not with every family, but we sure can impact whether they learn the information we're expecting them to learn. So we're actually adding a criteria for success that is easily documented in our end-of-the-year reporting. Number two, finding that vital behavior data and reporting that like we've typically done with our looking at each individual vital behavior and whether or not at least 60% of that work's happening at the family level, reporting that. And then in addition to that, number three is taking that step further, is what the families are learning and doing at home. Is it impacting the student outcome? Now this is going to look differently for everybody, and you need to decide what is your outcome that you're expecting to happen so that you can kind of set it up for yourself to measure that success. And the way I've chose to do it is I have a set of questions that I know that I'm going to ask every family at the end related to self-determination skills. And I will get some similar answers simply by asking those questions. So for instance, if I ask about, have you noticed any major differences in the way your child speaks up for themselves or talks to their teachers about what they need, and 5 out of 10 say, yes, in some way they've seen improved self-advocacy skills because now my child will ask for help when it's needed. They'll talk about their accommodations when before I've never heard them talk about that. That I can all relate to improved self-advocacy skills. So then I can say, well, 5 out of those 10 families I was able to reach mentioned that their child had improved self-advocacy skills. So whatever you decide to measure may look different, and I can obviously, link this maybe to they all 10 went to the next grade, none were retained, none, had behavior referrals during the year. Some of those are less likely to be directly supported by my work, so I've chose to look at self-determination specifically. So that is the presentation for all 3 areas that we wanted to kind of highlight today, and hopefully you saw your work represented in some way through one or more of those scenarios. We do want you to look ahead to these 3 learning targets being part of your next region meeting conversation, because we don't want you to not have the opportunity to tell us whether or not we did a good job in presenting this information to you and whether or not we included the things that you needed to hear. So in your next region meeting, along with maybe some other conversation starters, we'll address these as a region and then provide feedback to us, and maybe we can include some additional topics on learning targets that would be helpful as you implement your work. And also look forward to our universities in February and March to include more on learning targets and reporting so that next year when we're in full implementation of learning targets, you'll be more able to do it on an easy scale and feel very confident in writing learning targets as well as implementing those. You can look for other reporting material, tools, and links on our website. Of course, they're always there and they're being updated. And if you have any follow-up questions or need to address any of these things that were talked about today, remember your region reps are available to you as well as any of us. So we appreciate your time and watching this webinar, and we look forward to continuing great work in Georgia with families.
Thank you all. Thanks, ladies. And as April said, I think everyone could probably find something in their work, and what you presented were all different in each of our districts, but ultimately we're all trying to improve outcomes for students. So again, thank you for your time today, and thank you for your contributions, presenters. Have a great day.